So Leading by Coaching, your book is going to be coming out soon. Why did you write a book on leadership?
Because I want people to be happier at work, and we need good leaders who look after people.
And leading by coaching, what is leading by coaching?
It's a style of leadership, so it's looking after people, nurturing them, developing them, rather than the old style of command and control and directing people, which is what still a lot of people do.
So the conference we've got coming up is New Order Leadership, and you've just referred to the old style. What do you mean by the old style, and how does it contrast with the new style?
I think it's been driven by the new age of employees. So we had the millennials who wanted more than just being told what to do. But now we've got the Z generation coming. And these people want real purpose and meaning in their work. The millennials did as well, but even more so the Generation Z. And with artificial intelligence kicking in, the name of the game will be collaboration and innovation, and coming up with new ideas, creating new values. So your valuism approach.
I think you talked about the idea of leading by coaching being about trying to help the person be the best they can be.
Absolutely.
And the leading by coaching as an approach, where does it start? Who does it start with?
It starts with the leader understanding themselves better.
Being more conscious themselves,
Yeah, having
by their
conscious
leadership
awareness.
style.
Yeah, having conscious awareness of how they're impacting the people they're leading.
So you talk about them needing to look in first, and there are three elements of it. Yeah.
All right. Yes. So the three elements of the book. First of all, looking in. So looking at yourself. So the question I pose in the book, which I would ask anyone to think about if they're leading people, is why should anyone follow you? It's not the newest question in the world, but it's the most relevant. Why should anyone follow you? So the first bit is the introspection. So why would anyone follow me? Who am I? Finding your authentic voice. What do I stand for? My values. How do I like to treat people? Or how do I like to be treated? And therefore, how do I actually treat people?
And generally, how do people respond when you ask them to reflect, look inwards? Is that something that most CEOs find comfortable or difficult?
Difficult.
A
lot of them.
How do you overcome that difficulty then?
By letting them digest. Just think about, who they are and what they do and what's important to them, and to give themselves permission to be themselves rather than trying to be someone that they think they should be, which a lot of even very senior people do.
So in the old style, it's people performing the role of what they think a leader should be. So they're acting a role rather than being themselves.
Quite often, they probably think they're being themselves, but they're quite conditioned by expectations of a leader to be tough, maybe to be decisive and all these things. However, the latest research from Google, they looked at what makes the best performing teams, what do the leaders do in those teams. And what they found was that the most successful teams with the most successful leaders, therefore, what they did is they created a safe space for their people to be themselves, and they were less worried about themselves as leaders. It's more about holding the space for other people to grow and develop and collaborate and make mistakes even.
And the thing is, I guess most leaders have at some point in their career been led by other people, probably in the old style, and therefore are they just repeating the pattern of the old style rather than thinking about what kind of leader they want to be?
I think it's more complex than that. I think people want to be authentic, but sometimes don't know how to be authentic in public or in a certain role. And where coaching comes in is it just gives people a space to reflect on that and to realise that who they are in themselves is enough. So, and that's what attracts people. What attracts people to follow leaders is who they are, not what they represent or what kind of act they put on. Is the real person.
It sounds kind of paradoxical, really, because you're saying they don't really have the confidence to be themselves, whereas most people believe that leaders are the way they are because they're confident.
It's a mask very often, particularly in professional services. It's a mask which hides insecurity very often.
So does what we've said so far cover the one of the 3 points, the inward-looking part, or is there more to that?
There's a lot more to it. The book's quite ambitious in its scope. Fundamentally, it is about finding your authentic voice and having the courage to use that voice to lead people and to understand what's important to you. What is the difference you're trying to make?
So can you give a sense of what the sort of process is that somebody would go through in order to get to that point of a better understanding?
So we look at values, belief systems, then we look at emotional intelligence. So how do you manage your emotions? How do you, awareness first of your emotions, and then how do you manage them? And then awareness of other people's emotions and how you connect better with them. So emotional intelligence, we look at social intelligence. So how do you interact with other people? How do you pick up the signals that you need to be effective in different situations, social situations? I look at cultural intelligence, so how you can be more intelligent working with people in multi-jurisdictional teams across the globe. And then the last one is probably the most important one, which pulls everything together, which is what I've coined neuro-leadership intelligence. And neuro-leadership intelligence is actually pulling everything together in a brain-friendly way. So the book is based on a 5-year study of neuroscience. In fact, it goes back further than that, but 5 years intensive study of neuroscience to understand how the brain works and what motivates us to either follow people or be repelled by people, and how we communicate when we're at our best, so how leaders can communicate in a very positive way. So that neuro-leadership intelligence is all the time being aware of brain-friendly behaviours, but also understand the other components that I mentioned, so emotional
Being friendly to their own brain or the brain of the people they're leading?
It always starts with yourself, so being more compassionate towards yourself and not beating yourself up all the time is more likely to make you more compassionate to others. So very often I find that people who are very driven, quite a few of the CEOs I've coached who are very driven, and are not compassionate with themselves.
That comes first, and then you can be with other people.
Yeah, it all starts with how you see yourself, how you view yourself, how you treat yourself. So if you're not compassionate to yourself and your failings, you're not going to be compassionate to others and with their failings. And
you use the word compassion. Other people in the interviews we've had have talked more about empathy. Why do you deliberately distinguish between empathy and compassion?
Yes.
What's the distinction?
So empathy can be on 3 levels. They are linked, of course. You've got cognitive empathy, which is I understand at an intellectual level someone's problem. You can have empathy at an emotional level, which is that you can feel their pain. Compassionate empathy is actually doing something about it, actually deciding to intervene, crossing the road to the other side, reaching out to an employee who doesn't seem to be very happy, really listening to them, witnessing them. So that's what I mean by compassion. So empathy, they are linked, of course, but empathy goes further, compassion goes further.
It's really about really caring.
That's the key.
Yeah.
The key to leading by coaching, the whole book, is, if I had to sum it up in one sentence, it's choosing to care about the people that you're responsible for.
So that, again, is an element of helping somebody be the best they can be.
Yeah, creating the environment, clearing the path, so to speak, so that they can thrive, survive and thrive, and actually being interested in them as a human being first and then an employee. Not just, I hate the phrase human resources, as if everyone is there just to be a resource. We spend most of our time in our working lives. As I said, that's why I wrote the book, because I've had good managers and bad managers. And I realise how demotivating it is when you have a manager that doesn't bother to ask about your special needs son, which, as you know, my son might know is cerebral palsy. Not being interested at all in me as a person, because you can't bring yourself to work as a different person. Everything about your life makes you who you are.
It sounds like a fundamental rethink of the nature of relationship between the leader and the people that they're leading. From the old style, I mean. It's about the relationship more than anything else.
Absolutely. And it's about actually engaging people. So if people feel that you care, if people feel that you're looking out for them, trying to help them be as you said, Paul, be the best they can be, and have the environment to do that, then people will do more. They will give discretionary effort. They will be more productive. They will innovate more.
If they feel it's genuine.
Yeah. It has to be sincere. Authenticity and sincerity come together. It's not a game. This is not a management skill. This is an attitude. So
after the leaders looked in and developed this level of consciousness, which is step one, step two is
then looking out at how they can help other people be the best they can through coaching, coaching conversations, if you like.
And is that just about the people who are directly their responsibility as a leader, or is that the organisation as a whole?
It's the organisation
Any
as
kind
a
of
whole.
relationship.
Ideally, what I think would be more productive for companies and firms is if they had a listening culture. So a culture of actually genuinely, sincerely wanting to understand how people are feeling, what's on their minds, and helping them through coaching conversations develop and get off their chest whatever is holding them back.
And we've talked about this in the past in relation to addressing the problem of employee engagement. At the moment, employees don't feel valued, don't feel dignified, and therefore disengage. Yeah?
Not every company. I mean, if you look at, ironically, it's the tech companies, the Googles of this world, Microsoft, who are now right up there in terms of attracting top talent, the Amazons of this world, they are the people, the companies that have the approach I'm adopting. So I'm not saying no one's doing it. I'm saying more people should do it.
Yeah.
And there are some industries, particularly professional services.
I was really referring to the consequence of not doing it leads to the employees becoming disengaged.
Oh, absolutely. And then they leave.
Yeah.
And then when they're asked, what's it like working for, I won't mention any companies, but so-and-so, they say, well, don't work there. Because the employee is a brand ambassador as well. And also, if you treat employees well, they're going to treat customers better.
And I think that I mentioned the point about the disengagement because I think you've told me of a personal experience in the past. One of your first employers, I think it was.
Yeah. A second, actually.
Okay, but left you feeling decidedly undignified.
Well, isolated.
Yeah.
In fact, I was just reading only recently that 1 in 4 employees, workers in the UK, has got mental issues because of their work. Think of the misery that's causing. 1 in 4. So that is millions of people are going home really unhappy. It's got to impact on families where there is a family. And leaders aren't taking the responsibility for people's welfare and their happiness. And the irony is, if they did, they'd get even more out of them. And they think by being, or some of them, and some organisations more than others, think that if they're driving people and motivating them by targets and you've got to do more, that they're going to get more. But it's actually quite often the reverse.
Yeah, and by giving more, you get more.
The power of reciprocity, we all know, don't we? What goes round comes round. There's lots of different ways of putting it, but yeah, if you look after me and really show an interest in me, put yourself out for me, will I give discretionary effort? Yes. Will I tell you I've done it? Not necessarily. Conversely, if I'm not treated well, there will be things that I could do that I won't do that could actually make you money or do whatever you need doing, but I won't do them. I'll do what I need to do to survive, but I won't do any more because I don't believe you deserve my extra effort.
And there was an implication in that in an industrial era when somebody was just a machine operative, but in the knowledge economy, the implication of that is amplified massively, yeah?
Oh, absolutely, because people's brains or their intellectual horsepower, whatever you want to call it, will be tomorrow's work because machines will do a lot of the work that is being done now. So the only way people can get a job and companies can prosper is if they have people who are very motivated, very empowered to get out there and think about things and talk to people and innovate and try things. So the old style of leadership is just not going to work in the knowledge economy and in the world of AI. It's just not going to work. And the sooner companies wise up to this on a more, as you said before, is it organizationally or individually? It should be organizational. The tone has to be set from the top that we are a listening organization. Your job as a leader is to listen to your people and follow behind them.
Okay, so if the tone needs to be set from the top, do you think boards of companies are actually aware of this issue?
Very often not, from my experience, working with CEOs of boards and COOs of boards. So some are. I mean, these are not stupid people. However, they might know about it and talk about it and decide to do something about it, but do they actually walk the talk themselves? Very often not.
Well, for the most senior positions, it's usually, they usually engage an executive recruitment agency as part of the process as well. So do you think executive recruitment agencies actually understand the importance of recruiting the kinds of leaders you're talking about?
No.
How do we address that problem, do you think?
I think the starting point has got to be that boards need to be more diverse and they need to represent their customers better. So if you look at a typical board, there'll be 10 people that look like me, which is probably a good idea, but maybe not a good idea. What we want, I would say 3 people that look like me and 3 people that don't look like me at all and have totally different backgrounds, whether they're ladies or from different cultures or whatever. But to represent the customers and the employees who are going to be more and more diverse. So I think it starts with recognition at the top level of the board that we need to have a diverse team at the top, and we need to have this leading by coaching approach, more informal conversations to listen to people more.
But diversity can also be a mindset, can't it? It's not just about the way you look or your age, because you understand the importance of new order leadership and not the old order. So there are some people can get it. It's not. We shouldn't just
that's true.
Take it at face value.
Point. No, that's a fair point. And I'm not saying we should have quotas of different people on the board. What I'm really getting at is that the board themselves should recognise we need a more balanced team.
Yeah.
So therefore, if you're the CEO or the COO, you should be actively saying to recruitment companies, we need a more balanced portfolio of people.
Okay, so looking at the third of those three approaches or points, what was the third one?
Third one is looking beyond. And what that means is looking beyond to the future of work, and we've already touched on it, the future of organisations, and dealing with change, particularly.
The future of work's not just about the fact we've got new generations of recruits and they've got different attitudes to work, is it? There are many dimensions to the future of work.
Well, the future of work is going to be a totally different place to what work is at the moment, and we don't even know what the repercussions of AI, artificial intelligence, are going to be. The data-driven businesses. There's all sorts of pressures on businesses to change. Some are changing quicker than others, but fundamentally, it's going to the people difference is going to be magnified, and the companies that recruit the people that are the brightest, if you like, in inverted commas, will only be able to recruit them if those people who are data savvy anyway, so they're going to be able to find out loads of stuff about these companies. So if I'm sitting here trying to interview you, Paul, to join my company, you're going to know more about my company than I do. So these data savvy people, they're going to be cuter as well. They're going to be able to suss out the companies that really mean it, that really want to make the world better, and the companies who are just saying it because they want to get the best people.
The other point about this as well is the leader now doesn't only lead a permanent team of people, but they lead a very transient team of people that might include some employees and some freelancers from the gig economy and so on. So how managing teams that keep morphing all the time must be a different kind of challenge as well.
Very difficult, and you can't manage people remotely as effectively, obviously, as if you're with them. However, it's actually about the values that the company espouses to and how they live those values from the top, and how they recruit, because you recruit the people that you believe have similar values very often. So if you want people to be open, transparent, sincere, tolerant, then you try and employ people like that.
So looking outwards is about embracing diversity of values and ideas and so on, diversity of cultures. Is there more to the idea of looking beyond?
Yes, it's also about developing your signature presence as a leader.
Which means?
Embracing all of these things and leveraging who you are and what you want to change in the world.
Your style, is it?
Yeah.
I don't understand the word signature in there.
Yeah, signature style, if you like.
Right.
So why would I follow you as a leader? So, well, because Paul is very sincere person. He really believes in a better future, and he really shares his ideas with everyone. Or they can see who you are. The key, coming back right to the start, is authenticity.
Yeah, and the signature sounds like a compilation of a mix of values from what you've just described.
It's a mix of values, behaviours, skills, attributes. It's about focus. Where do you focus your attention? It's a lot of things, and the whole book is a build-up to this. So all the time, the first part was looking in, reflecting on who you are. Why would anyone follow you? And understanding yourself better.
Sounds like it's got some kind of relationship with the idea of character.
Absolutely. So rather than the culture of the organisation, what sort of character do we want? And of course, the character of the organisation is going to be a reflection of the character of the people that run it, particularly the top table, which is why the board really is so fundamental, the direction of the company. And people do look to the board, the leaders, to get a handle on how they should behave. That's human nature.
One of the mechanisms that you've spoken about in the past is the idea that change needs to begin and it needs to happen one conversation at a time. Mm-hmm. That sounds like a very slow process, but can you explain what you mean by why that's the case?
Well, first of all, where I got that phrase was from an interview that I did with a lady who was a managing partner of a big law firm. And it was a big regional law firm that was going through a lot of change. And I was saying to her, Victoria, she's in the book, Victoria Brackett, so how do you get these partners, 75 of them, to change? Because I know what they're like very often, because I work with law firms, they don't really want to change. And she said, well, they don't know it, but I've been coaching all 75 of them one conversation at a time. And they're changing one conversation at a time. Mm. And in fact, she then said, organizations change one person at a time. And that stuck with me. That really resonated with me. And I thought, that actually is why change processes fail. Because organizations look at it as a kind of process and don't really understand that for individuals, any change, even changing where they sit in the office, can be very painful. And that's how the brain works, because we're social animals.
So you don't actually change culture, you evolve culture.
You change a culture by understanding there's going to be a natural resistance to change, and by supporting people through that change.
But it's not a quick process. It's not something you can do quickly.
Not at all.
Is it better to think of it as an evolution rather than change?
Absolutely. And if you try and speed it up, it fails. And there's a number of case studies in my book. I can think of one particularly with Allianz Global Investors, where they really invested a lot of money going right down to the lowest level and finding out what sort of company do you want to work for. And they asked their clients, what sort of company do you want to invest with? And they did all this research, bottom up, to find out what people's vision was of expectation, because no one would seem very proud to work for that company. And I think a lot of people aren't very proud to work for their companies, and if that's the case, then that's a shame. So you're right, it is a gradual process, but it can build up speed, but you've got to start in the right place. You've got to start at the bottom, but you've got to believe at the top, or have an idea, what sort of company do we want to run? Mm. What are we about? And what is our differentiation as well in the marketplace?
And why are we doing it?
Yeah, why are we doing it? Why should we do it? And why would customers think that was a good thing to do for our company? Because it's about belief. We need to believe in what we're doing, and our customers need to believe in us, and our employees need to believe in us. And if we can join all that up, then we've got a very powerful brand.
So you've got many clients in the professional services sector and law in particular. Mm-hmm. That industry is being faced with several different drivers of disruption, from technology, from regulatory change and so on. So the business models within the legal sector are needing to evolve. Mm-hmm. They're changing from the responding to client requirements, almost transactional type relationship, mm-hmm. to having to develop new relationships mm-hmm. with their clients. How do they need to take the ideas in the book to help them achieve that kind of transformation? Will the ideas in the book help them in that process?
The ideas would definitely help them if they're adopted. I think the challenge for quite a few firms, and this is not universal, in terms of even the firms where I'm going to say they have a challenge in changing, because you have young partners and even older partners who want to change, they see the need for change. The problem, I think, with the professional services industry that I've been dealing with now for 15 years is very often they hide behind their professional mask. They've got to the top, they're a partner of a law firm, they behave like a partner in a law firm, they have a certain culture within that law firm, they play the game, they're all kind of, it's a bit like an old gentleman's club in a way.
Performing a role rather than being authentic.
And not actually stepping out of that and saying, well, actually, the sort of people that we need to attract and the sort of how the clients are thinking differently, we need to step out and be, and show really who we are and how we can adapt. And I think they find that a very difficult process. And I think just one other thing is they're incredibly successful. Despite all this change, they're still making billions of pounds. You never see the turnover of one of the major firms go down significantly at all. So there's an inertia within the market because their clients very often are like them. They're ex-lawyers or partners of law firms, and they hire people like themselves. So it's a kind of self-perpetuating circle. However, the judgment day is not far off because companies are going to have to significantly cut their legal spend, significantly, because it's money that's not producing anything. And although they've been saying this for a long time, the competition from from technology and from data is such that law firms are going to find a lot of their businesses commoditized. So they're going to have to really up their game in terms of building deeper relationships and offering different sort of service than they have.
So it seems to me like the benefits of the approach of leading by coaching improves the relationship not only with employees, but anybody that the person has a relationship with, whether that's customers, suppliers, or anybody else.
Absolutely, because all leading by coaching is, and all coaching is a conversation. So what we're saying is businesses need to have better conversations
and
with their employees.
Better relationships.
Exactly. Better conversations lead to better relationships, which lead to better outcomes for employees, for clients, customers, and even regulators. If regulators see that there's a more open management style, then they're going to be less intrusive than if they think it's a bit of a closed shop.
So in the conversation so far, have we covered, do you think, the key points of what you're saying in the Leading by Coaching book? I know there's a lot more depth in the book than we've discussed so far, but is there anything that in the book that we've not touched on?
What I'd like anyone listening to this video to think about is how can they develop their leadership styles? How can they be more effective at leading change? And it's a journey. I mean, we're all on a journey. We're all on a journey to find our, if you like, personal truth of who we actually are, what is important to us, what difference do we want to make. And I think people should try to embrace that, because I think they'll have a much bigger impact, but also a more fulfilling career if they play less of the games and more of the what needs to be done and what they can do to help.
And so Leading by Coaching, the book, as we said at the beginning, is out soon. You're also going to be offering workshop seminars and one-to-one and a range of different services that you refer to in the book. That's what you've already been doing, but it's kind of extending the product offering to an extent to include workshops and things.
Yeah. What we want to do is really focus on training leaders to be better coaches, to give them better skills. Because coaching is, as I said, just a conversation, but it's a skillful conversation. It's a conversation that requires a lot of self-knowledge, a self-mastery. It requires a lot of communication skills, the use of silence. In fact, if there's one thing we haven't mentioned, and I haven't produced enough of it in this interview, is silence. And it's the confidence to hold that space for the other person so that things can just come out.
And talking about the science again reminds me, the book you said before is unique in the sense that it combines for the first time Gestalt theory and neuroscience.
Yes.
Can you just explain briefly how and why that's important?
Yeah, sure. The first thing I would say is I'm actually Gestalt trained as a coach.
Can you just explain what Gestalt is for people who don't?
Of course. And that's my point I was going to make, which is I spent 2 years on a Gestalt training course, and at the end of it, I didn't know what Gestalt was.
Right.
Gestalt, I discovered, was simply the ability to be in the moment with another person.
That sounds like mindfulness.
Well, that's part of it. Let me explain more. So it's the ability to pick up what is going on in the room, not just with the person that you're coaching, but with yourself. Because out of that comes the truth, out of that comes insights, out of that comes almost therapy in terms of people feel a release.
So people talk about consciousness, but that sounds like a different level again.
Well, that's where my company, The Parallel Mind, which is behind this, comes in, because the parallel mind is the conscious mind and the unconscious mind working together. So what coaching is letting some of the unconscious thoughts and fears and feelings, emotions come to the surface so that they can be dealt with in a conscious way. So because if you're not consciously aware of these things, they drive you and you don't even know what's happening.
So leaders might be familiar with and use the term "my gut instinct." Is it about recognizing instinct, or is it different than that?
Well, the brain is driven by instinct, so it's definitely about that. But it's getting things to a conscious level, so people can start understanding where they fit. And if they're not fitting in, if they're having problems, the Gestalt means wholeness. It means completing the circle. So what the coach does is, by allowing people to just be and express themselves without trying to direct them or control them or coach them even, they have a chance to understand themselves what's going on. So what a coach does fundamentally is listens to a client so they can hear themselves.
But if the leader was on their own, would they recognise just a feeling of not being complete? Is that the way to recognise?
Well, people, we all have issues, don't we, and challenges. So when we have an issue, in Gestalt theory, that's what's called the figure. So the thing we're focusing on that makes us unhappy, if you like. And for us to move on, we need to reconcile it.
Yeah.
We need to put the figure into the ground, so to speak, so put it into the context of our situation, because the brain is very systemic, holistic. So we can only move on if we understand why we're not fitting in, and the coaching process allows that to come out unconsciously, so that consciously we can deal with it and move on. And that's why Gestalt and neuroscience, and you're right, this is the first time, as far as I'm aware, that anyone has put the two together, because on this Gestalt course they never even mention neuroscience, and yet it's the brain that is driving our unconscious and our conscious mind. So if we don't understand how the brain works, how can we work with that to actually make it work better together?
So it's sensing and articulating the feelings we've got by being more conscious of the way we feel, is it?
Yeah, and what's driving that?
Yeah.
And but also the relationships that we're in that are driving that, because the brain is very social. We are very social animals, we all know that. So when we don't fit in to our group, our A group, that is very painful for the brain.
Yeah.
So it's about understanding the relationships within our system.
And by achieving that and dealing with any potential conflicts, that's one way of making sure we don't have mental illness problems.
Absolutely, full circle.
Yeah.
Because it's that being witnessed. There's a number of case studies in my book about how important it is for us just to be witnessed as human beings, just to be heard, just to be fully understood. If there's one message in my book or one crusade I would like to say, and I hope people get from the book, is it's so important that people feel witnessed. Who they are feels witnessed and not judged, just witnessed.
Yeah.
And that, it can have an incredible effect on people's lives in a positive way.
So before a leader can actually help the person they're leading be the best they can be, they've got to really go through this process and then help the person they're leading go through the same process.
That's why the book's in 3 parts. Looking in at yourself, looking beyond people you're coaching, looking in, looking out to coach others, and looking beyond to move your organisation forward.
Yeah.
It all starts with yourself, though. It all starts with awareness. And typically in law firms, we mentioned, I'm not accountancy firms, banks, even industrial companies, very often people don't like feedback, particularly the higher they get. They don't want to confront the truth. They want to hide behind this professional mask. They want to be in this bubble. They want to feel they're doing a great job. And they're under a lot of pressure. And it's much easier to lead that way.
Well, it's avoiding dealing with the issues rather than confronting the issues.
Yeah, and you can understand why they would do that very often. However, the real learning is to find out how other people, how you impact your behaviours, impact other people, and being able to adapt that and understand who you are as a person. Because I think it was Socrates that said the unexamined life isn't worth living, and how many of us are living our lives without examining what is important to us, why we do what we do, why we work for who we work, what we say, what we do. And if we can get to that a deeper level, we can be much happier, much more effective as leaders.
And that brings me to a good final point, which is basically it has a big impact on the legacy that you're going to leave rather.
Oh, absolutely, because the end game is developing tomorrow's leaders, the future leaders of your organisation. And by having a more open, conversational, leading by coaching style, you can help develop people. Because coaching should be anytime, any place, anywhere. It shouldn't be just a formal situation. It's just about having a series of conversations that is leading to a better place for the employee, but also the organisation. And you as a leader.
Great. Thanks very much.
Thank you.